Long ago, in the land of Canaan, there were two cities known as Sodom and Gomorrah. These cities had become infamous for their wickedness and depravity, and their sins had reached the ears of the Lord. One day, the Lord appeared to Abraham outside his tent. He spoke to Abraham, saying, "The cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grievous. I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it." Abraham, knowing the severity of the city's sins, interceded on behalf of any righteous people who might dwell there. He asked the Lord if he would spare the cities if there were 50 righteous people within them. The Lord agreed, and Abraham continued to plead for the city's salvation, lowering the number to 45, then 40, then 30, 20, and finally 10 righteous people. Meanwhile, two angels arrived in Sodom in the evening. Lot, Abraham's nephew, sat in the gate of the city and saw them. Recognizing their heavenly nature, Lot rose to meet them and urged them to stay at his house for the night. As the angels entered Lot's house, the men of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house and demanded that Lot bring out the visitors so they could have relations with them. Lot, horrified by their wickedness, pleaded with them not to do such evil and offered his own daughters instead, but the men refused to listen. Seeing the danger, the angels struck the men with blindness, thwarting their wicked intentions. They warned Lot of the impending destruction of the city and instructed him to gather his family and flee to escape the judgment. At dawn, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, "Escape for thy life, look not behind thee. Neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed." Lot hesitated, but the angels, in their mercy, took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his two daughters, and led them out of the city. As they fled, fire and brimstone rained down from the heavens upon Sodom and Gomorrah, utterly destroying the cities and their inhabitants. Lot's wife, despite the warning not to look back, turned her gaze toward the city and instantly became a pillar of salt. Lot and his daughters reached the safety of a nearby cave. In fear and confusion, thinking they were the only survivors, Lot's daughters devised a plan to ensure their family line continued. They made their father drink wine and lay with him, each bearing a son, Moab and Ammon, who would become the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah stood as a stark warning of God's judgment upon sin and the importance of righteousness and obedience. Lot and his family, though spared from the city's fate, bore witness to the consequences of wickedness and the mercy of the Lord upon the righteous. In the ancient land of Canaan, nestled by the shores of the Dead Sea, there lay two cities known far and wide for their wickedness and depravity. These cities were Sodom and Gomorrah. The people of Sodom and Gomorrah had earned a notorious reputation that reached the heavens. Their sins were grievous, and their way of life was steeped in immorality and evil practices. Among the sins that marked these cities, one of the most infamous was their rampant sexual immorality. The men of Sodom had become known for their perverse desires, caring not for the boundaries of decency or the sanctity of relationships. When two angels visited the righteous man Lot in Sodom, the men of the city surrounded Lot's house, demanding that the visitors be brought out to them so they could satisfy their lustful desires. Yet, the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah extended beyond mere immorality. It was a place devoid of hospitality and compassion. Despite the cultural importance placed on welcoming strangers and showing kindness, the people of Sodom showed none of these virtues. They were willing to commit violence and harm against those who sought refuge within their walls. Moreover, Sodom and Gomorrah were marked by injustice and oppression. The powerful exploited the weak, the rich ignored the plight of the poor, and righteousness was cast aside for selfish gain. The prophet Ezekiel would later speak of Sodom's sins, condemning their pride, indulgence, and neglect of the needy. Above all, Sodom and Gomorrah had turned their backs on God's commands. Their hearts had become hardened, and they pursued idolatry and sinful pleasures without remorse or repentance. As the cries of the oppressed and the pleas for justice reached the heavens, the Lord decided to investigate the depths of Sodom and Gomorrah's depravity. What he found confirmed the worst of rumors, and his righteous judgment was swift and severe. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of unrepentant sin and the importance of living according to God's moral standards. Among the sins that marked these cities, one of the most infamous was their rampant sexual immorality and perversion. The men of Sodom had become known for their perverse desires, caring not for the boundaries of decency or the sanctity of relationships. When two angels visited the righteous man Lot in Sodom, the men of the city surrounded Lot's house, demanding that the visitors be brought out to them so they could satisfy their lustful desires. Yet the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah extended beyond mere immorality. It was a place devoid of hospitality and compassion. Despite the cultural importance placed on welcoming strangers and showing kindness, the people of Sodom showed none of these virtues. They were willing to commit violence and harm against those who sought refuge within their walls. Moreover, Sodom and Gomorrah were marked by injustice and oppression. The powerful exploited the weak, the rich ignored the plight of the poor, and righteousness was cast aside for selfish gain. The prophet Ezekiel would later speak of Sodom's sins, condemning their pride, indulgence, and neglect of the needy. Above all, Sodom and Gomorrah had turned their backs on God's commands. Their hearts had become hardened, and they pursued idolatry and sinful pleasures without remorse or repentance. As the cries of the oppressed and the pleas for justice reached the heavens, the Lord decided to investigate the depths of Sodom and Gomorrah's depravity. What he found confirmed the worst of rumors, and his righteous judgment was swift and severe. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of unrepentant sin and the importance of living according to God's moral standards. As the sun set on the horizon, casting a crimson glow over the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, a sense of foreboding hung in the air. The sins of the cities had reached the heavens, and the Lord's patience was wearing thin. One evening, two angels arrived in Sodom, sent by the Lord to investigate the depths of the city's wickedness. They found shelter in the home of Lot, a righteous man who dwelt among the sinful inhabitants of Sodom. The men of the city, hearing of the arrival of the strangers, gathered outside Lot's house, demanding that the visitors be brought out to them. Their intentions were wicked, and their hearts were filled with lust and depravity. Seeing the danger that loomed, the angels revealed to Lot the impending judgment upon the cities. They warned him to gather his family and flee from the wrath that was to come. The message was clear: the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah had reached a tipping point, and divine judgment was imminent. Despite the urgency of the warning, some hesitated. Lot's sons-in-law, married to his daughters, mocked the message, unable to grasp the severity of the situation. As dawn approached, the angels urged Lot to hasten his departure. "Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed," they warned. Lot, his wife, and their two daughters fled from the city, guided by the angels. But as they fled, a tragic event unfolded. Lot's wife, perhaps unable to resist the temptation, looked back towards the city, disobeying the divine command. In an instant, she was turned into a pillar of salt, a testament to the severity of her disobedience and the consequences of turning back to the life of sin. Meanwhile, the judgment of the Lord rained down upon Sodom and Gomorrah. Fire and brimstone fell from the heavens, engulfing the cities in a blaze of divine fury. The sinful inhabitants, consumed by their wickedness, perished in the flames. When the smoke cleared and the ashes settled, all that remained of Sodom and Gomorrah were ruins, a stark reminder of the consequences of unrepentant sin and the righteous judgment of the Lord. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a sobering warning, highlighting the severity of sin and the importance of heeding divine warnings before it's too late. In the aftermath of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, amidst the ruins and remnants of once thriving cities, a profound sense of awe and solemnity settled upon the survivors. Lot and his daughters, having escaped the divine judgment, pondered the lessons learned from the cataclysmic events that had unfolded. As they sat by the flickering light of their campfire, Lot recounted the warnings given by the angels and the tragic fate of his wife, who had looked back towards the sinful city against divine command. The gravity of disobedience weighed heavily upon their hearts, and they realized the importance of obedience to God's commands. Lot's daughters, having witnessed the destruction firsthand, spoke of the hospitality shown by their father and uncle Abraham. They remembered how Abraham had welcomed strangers, even angels in disguise, into his home with kindness and generosity. They understood the significance of hospitality, a virtue sorely lacking in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Moreover, the story served as a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked sin and moral decay. The once prosperous cities had descended into depravity and wickedness, forsaking righteousness and embracing sinful desires. Their downfall was a stark reminder of the fleeting nature of worldly pleasures and the ultimate judgment that awaits the unrepentant. As they reflected on these lessons, Lot and his daughters resolved to live lives of righteousness and obedience to God's commands. They vowed to cultivate a spirit of hospitality and compassion towards others, following the example set by Abraham and the righteous few. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah echoed through the generations, serving as a timeless reminder of the importance of righteousness, hospitality, and obedience to God's commands. It stood as a warning against the allure of sin and moral decay, urging all who heard its message to heed the lessons learned from the tragic fate of the cities lost to wickedness. And so, amidst the ruins of the past, a new resolve emerged, a commitment to walk in the ways of the Lord, to uphold righteousness, to show hospitality, and to live lives that honored God and His commands. In the quiet moments of reflection after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot and his daughters found themselves contemplating the timeless lessons learned from the tragic events that had unfolded. As they sat under the starlit sky, a conversation arose about the parallels between the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah and contemporary societal issues. Lot's daughters spoke of the rampant sexual immorality and perversion that had consumed the cities, drawing a parallel to the modern-day challenges of pornography, promiscuity, and the objectification of human relationships. They recognized the destructive nature of such sins, leading to broken families, shattered lives, and a society adrift in moral confusion. Lot, reflecting on the lack of hospitality and compassion in Sodom and Gomorrah, saw echoes of this in today's world, where selfishness and indifference often overshadow acts of kindness and generosity. He urged viewers to consider the importance of hospitality, not just in welcoming strangers, but in showing empathy and care for those in need within their own communities. Moreover, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of idolatry and the rejection of God's commands. Lot reminded listeners of the allure of materialism, the pursuit of worldly pleasures, and the temptation to prioritize self-interest over obedience to God's will. He encouraged viewers to re-examine their priorities, seeking spiritual fulfillment and righteousness above all else. As they contemplated these parallels, Lot and his daughters encouraged viewers to reflect on their own lives and communities. They urged them to avoid the pitfalls of sin and moral decay, emphasizing the importance of promoting righteousness, compassion, and obedience to God's commands in their daily lives. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah, though ancient in its origins, carried timeless truths that resonated across generations. It served as a wake-up call, urging all who heard its message to examine their hearts, align their actions with God's will, and strive to build communities grounded in righteousness, hospitality, and compassion. In the aftermath of recounting the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and drawing parallels to contemporary societal issues, Lot and his daughters sat in contemplation, summarizing the key points and takeaways from their discussion. Lot spoke first, emphasizing the destructive nature of sin and moral decay, as seen vividly in the downfall of Sodom and Gomorrah. He highlighted the importance of righteousness, hospitality, and obedience to God's commands, urging viewers to reflect on their own lives and communities. His daughters echoed these sentiments, underscoring the need for compassion, empathy, and a rejection of idolatry and materialism. They urged viewers to avoid the pitfalls of sin and to prioritize spiritual fulfillment and righteousness above worldly pursuits. As they concluded their reflections, Lot and his daughters shared a message of hope, a reminder of the possibility of redemption and renewal through repentance and faith. They spoke of the mercy and forgiveness of God, inviting viewers to turn away from sin, seek forgiveness, and embrace a life guided by God's love and grace. In their closing words, Lot and his daughters issued a call to action, a call to examine one's heart, to align one's actions with God's will, and to work towards building communities grounded in righteousness, hospitality, and compassion. They offered a message of hope, reminding viewers that no matter how far one may have strayed, redemption and renewal are always within reach through genuine repentance and unwavering faith in God.